You guys caught me at a bad time. I've got diarrhea. Good thing this McDonald's has a bathroom. Won't let that. Oh my god, Jesus Christ. I'm sorry guys, but that's what happens when you eat McDonald's. You know what? I think it's about time we check them out. Let's go. Hey look, it's McDonald's, the place that I was talking about. Sponsor time, let's go. McDonald's is the place to go. Whether it's a date, if you want to impress somebody, if you want to impress their parents, if you want... McDonald's is the place to go for when you want to impress somebody. Whether it's a date, your wife's parents, or in my case, the cute girl behind the counter. McDonald's has over 4 drinks for you to choose from. 4! Can you believe it? And their play place always has some idiot who likes to walk out through the fire exit. McDonald's, where happiness is just a lawsuit away. I probably should have showered before doing this sponsorship. Excuse me. Much better. Nothing like a hot shower to put you in the mood to play a good game. Now speaking of good games, we're going to be talking about Banjo-Kazooie today. Now before we actually do, I want to tell you guys how I recorded said footage. The original plan was for me to put on my 64 and record footage that way. Because I'm just a sucker for authenticity. I like playing the N64 titles with the N64 remote. I know it's more convenient to play in the virtual console, let's say something like Ocarina of Time or Mario 64. But if you ask me, it just feels better playing with the N64 remote. But you can't argue that when it comes to the game footage for you guys, there's no comparison. The re-release on the Xbox 360 Live Arcade, also on the Rare Replay and Xbox One, is the definitive way to play this game. Honestly, it just looks better, it runs better, and it sounds better. So that's the version I'll be using today to capture my game footage for the review. Just wanted to clear that up. Now you're probably wondering, Paul, why are you talking about Banjo-Kazooie, an actual video game, a good game at that, versus your last 4 reviews that weren't really conventional, I would say? Well, I got one good reason. The YouTube algorithm. Back in June 1998, one of the greatest games on the N64, if not in history, was released. That's right kids, I'm talking about Quest 64. Oh, and Banjo-Kazooie too, I guess. Back when this game first came out, opinions were torn to say the least. On one hand, you had people accusing Banjo-Kazooie of being a shameless copy of Mario 64. But on the other hand, who gives a f***? Just because they copied a lot from Mario 64's formula doesn't mean it's a bad game. And besides, it's not like having more than one of the same type of game is a bad thing. Huh, we've come a long way, haven't we? For the 2 of you who don't know at this point, Banjo-Kazooie was actually developed by a company called Rareware, the same company responsible for the DK Country trilogy, Battletoads, and the Diddy Kong racing game. It's weird. I couldn't tell you guys when I remember first playing this game, since I was only a couple of months away from being 3 at the game's release, but I do remember certain first impressions. I remember spending 30 minutes looking for this last bottles move that I could never seem to find. I remember taking what felt like forever to get this honeycomb and just giving up on it. I remember slipping off the slope and wondering if Tootie was up there, waiting for me to save her. And who could forget that bull who never died in Mumbles Mountain. But more than anything, the one thing my young self remembered the most was the videotape that promoted the game.
First, there was Donkey and Diddy Kong, then Diddy and Dixie, Dixie and Kiddy, Mario and Yoshi. Okay, you get the point. So what's the big deal? Well, listen up, because there's a new dynamic duo from the creators of Donkey Kong Country and GoldenEye that's ready to kick some serious excitement into Nintendo 64. It's Banjo-Kazooie!
I didn't know it at the time, but this was the first video game trailer I had ever seen. I don't even think my parents were subscribed to Nintendo Power. That was the way most people got this videotape. My guess is that we rented it from Blockbuster and never gave it back. I was probably about 3 or 4 when I actually got my own copy of Banjo-Kazooie. I actually have this memory of me watching this videotape twice in a row, then popping in my copy of Banjo-Kazooie trying my hardest to get to Click Clock Woods. I of course want to get there for another 5 years, but that's besides the point. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Paul, we thought you were always the gaming god. So what happened? Well, it turns out, like everyone else, I'm only human. I used to suck at Banjo-Kazooie. You know, it was so bad, I wish I had my original file just to show you guys how long it took for me to beat Mumbles Mountain. But you know what? I kind of miss sucking at Banjo-Kazooie. These days I still suck at video games, but once I get the hang of them, I can beat the game in the same amount of hours that the programmers expect you to, if not a little faster. You know, the way God intended. But as a child, I'd spend up to 5 hours in the damn tutorials alone. But in a way, it's almost like the games I played were my own backyard. Mumbles Mountain, for example, was huge, full of all kinds of strange things I never saw before. And yet, it was still a safe place for me to explore and just have fun. That's the thing about this game. No matter how long it's been and no matter how many better games have come out, I'll always have a special place for this game in my heart. Obviously I'm biased, but even without the nostalgia goggles, it's still a really good game. Now, I know it sounds like all I've done so far is suck Banjo's dick, but let me explain why I enjoy sucking said dick. Let's start with Banjo-Kazooie's story. This is Gruntilda. She's gonna be our main antagonist for the game, and honestly, she's the best. She throws a bitch fit when she asks her magic pot who the hottest girl in the land is, and the pot responds with Tootie, Banjo's underage sister, who also happens to be a bear. Normally, I'd object, since I'd rather have sex with an 80-year-old beast than some 10-year-old jailbait. But then I remember that Tootie was an anthropomorphic bear, and if there's anything I've learned in my 15 years of studying Japanese hentai, is that bears are higher on the hentai food chain than humans. That explains why the magic pot didn't say that Humba Wumba was the hottest in the land. Getting back to the story, a salty Gruntilda flies down a spiral mountain, which is where Tootie so happens to live, and kidnaps her with the intent to steal her beauty from her. Meanwhile, this piece of crap named Bottles does what any other nosy neighbor would do in his situation. Stand there and let it happen. This is Banjo-Kazooie. Kazooie's the bird in the backpack that's trying her best to wake up Banjo. By the time our heroes get out of the house, it's too late. Bottles gives us the bad news, then offers to show us some basic moves before going up to the witch's castle. If you choose to skip the tutorial, he'll just hand you the moves. But if you decide that you change your mind and you want him to teach you the moves, this son of a bitch threatens to erase your game data. You know, Bottles, that basically makes you this universe's equivalent to Thanos. If you have that kind of power, then why don't you save Tootie? You bitch. Once you complete the tutorial, you're off to Grunty's castle. Along the way, you'll meet a gang of clowns that'll help you out on your quest. The first one's Mumbo Jumbo. He's a shaman that transforms you into creatures in certain levels. This helps you do certain things that regular Banjo-Kazooie can't. This grenade's name is Brentilda. She's one of Grunty's sisters that for some reason hates Gruntilda. You'll find her in a bunch of places all over the castle. Every time you find her, she'll give you 3 personal secrets about Gruntilda. You're gonna want to write them down. You'll need these secrets eventually. More on that later though. And finally, this is Cheeto, Gruntilda's spellbook. Every time you find him, he hands you a cheat code that'll make your game a lot easier. That's right, kids. Back in my day, you had to earn your cheats. You couldn't just go on YouTube, Twitch, Google, Discord, or Reddit. We didn't have that back then. And if we did, none of us had the internet. We had Nintendo Power, we had word of mouth from friends, or we had hard work that actually, took time for us to play the game and get good at the game and find the cheat codes ourselves. With that said, looking up these codes now wouldn't really help you. The game developers were smart enough to program the game's code not to work until you actually talk to Cheeto. Besides these guys though, you also run into a bunch of other characters such as Captain Blubba, Gobi, Boggy the Bear, or Tip Top from Diddy Kong Racing. One of the last important characters is named Klungo, Gruntilda's evil assistant. He shows up when you first enter the castle, during a cutscene that's meant to pump you up. He made a machine that's going to steal Tootie's sex appeal and give it to Gruntilda. This is pretty much all the story you're going to get besides the ending, which I'm not going to spoil in this video. The last cutscene you do get is when you quit the game or get a game over. My god, this has to be one of the best game over screens I've ever seen. Klungo ends up activating the machine and gives Tootie's beauty to Gruntilda, resulting in... Wow, I didn't think I'd be using this joke again so soon. Because of Klungo's machine, Grunty ends up moving higher in the hentai food chain. Emerald-colored space girls / magic thoughts are hotter than cartoon animals. Sorry, Tootie. But if you thought Grunty was the pinnacle of sex, then you clearly don't understand DeviantArt. I don't get what the big deal is. I mean, it's a win-win for both of them. Look how hot they are. Well, okay, maybe not Tootie, but I can see how people would find her attractive. I mean, I find Ogre Fiona attractive, so I'm sure someone out there has to have a green balloon bear fetish. Excuse me. A little touch I like about this game is that as soon as you enter her castle, Grunty taunts you from the safety of her sex chamber, and she never stops. During the whole game, she'll taunt and tease you just for fun. I really enjoy this feature. It makes your journey feel a lot less lonely. It just goes to show how much love the game developers put into this game. Now I realize that all I've done so far is talk about everything but the gameplay of Banjo-Kazooie. But that's because gameplay is only half of what makes Banjo-Kazooie so good. The other half is its overall presentation and charm. I mean, look at this. This teacher named Tip Top is making me smash all his students just to get myself a jiggy. If that doesn't scream Oscar nomination for Teacher of the Year, then I don't know what does. And this music is fantastic. I mean, just listen to the song. And these sound effects. Move over, Gundam style. Speaking of sound effects, this game is actually pretty infamous for the way characters speak. You either love it or hate it. And I get it. Our feeble human minds can only take bottles of sexy voice for so long, right? But I never understood why people would choose not to give this game a chance just because of this little feature. I'm looking at you, Sonic Toast. I mean, dumb jokes aside, I think that's a really dumb reason to pass up on a game, but that's just my opinion. If games like Mario 64, Donkey Kong 64, Spyro, or any other 3D platformer / collectathon games aren't your cup of tea, then I could see why you might want to pass up on this game. But chances are if you owned any Nintendo console, then you're a fan of Mario 64. With that said, I think you should give the Baron Bird a chance, considering Banjo-Kazooie is very similar to Mario 64. The main objective of Banjo-Kazooie is to collect puzzle pieces in each world, that way you can open up new worlds, therefore letting you collect more puzzle pieces. Puzzle pieces aren't the only things you'll be collecting though. You're also going to need to collect music notes in order to get rid of certain doors that are blocking your progression in Gruntilda's castle. There's also these molehills in almost every level. It's in these molehills that bottles will teach you even more moves to help you out in your journey. Honeycomb containers permanently upgrade your health by 1 health point as soon as you collect 6. Mumbo tokens are used as currency in Mumbo's hut. Give him a one-time payment of whatever he's asking for, and he'll transform you into an animal in a limited amount of times in that particular level. There's also miscellaneous objects for you to collect that'll help you out in certain situations, such as collecting Captain Blubba's treasure and giving it back to him. And finally, the most iconic collectibles in the game. No, iconic collectibles in the Banjo-Kazooie franchise. No, the most iconic collectibles in gaming history. That's right guys, you know what I'm talking about. Ammo. At the end of the game, Gruntilda presents you with one last challenge. It's a board game, to the death. That's right guys, this is what separates the men from the Banjo-Kazooie fans. Each one of these squares offers you one specific challenge. Music notes will ask you to name a certain song or sound from the game. An eyeball will ask you to name who or what's in the photo. A stopwatch is a minigame or boss you have to beat in a certain time limit. A Banjo-Kazooie space is a trivia about the game. And a space with Gruntilda's face in it will be trivia about herself. Remember when I told you might want to write down Gruntilda's juicy gossip? This is why. I mean, how was I supposed to know that Gruntilda's famous party trick wasn't a sexy striptease? I mean, if I had a bot like that, you know I'd be a hoe too. So yeah, I hope for your sake that you guys were taking notes on what Gruntilda was talking about. If not, then hey, there's always the internet. Yeah, sadly that's the one thing Rareware couldn't stop. Admittedly, it was a problem back then too, but with game guides and replaying the files, but hey, what are you gonna do? The last 2 spaces on the board game were skulls and joker spaces. They're both random challenges. The only difference is a skull will automatically kill you if you fail the test, and a joker rewards you with 2 joker cards. You can use these joker cards to skip a space, thereby shitting on the skull's existence. If you fail any of the other challenges, you simply lose some health. At the end of the board game, Grunty challenges you one last time to one-on-one combat. Now I swore I never hit a woman, but it's 2019. It'd be sexist of me not to. Oh, don't look at me like that. The bitch had it coming. So the game's a collectathon. Big whoop. You've seen those before. And it's 2019. So why should you go back and play an old game from the Stone Age? I've got one good reason for you, hard to convince a viewer. Curiosity. Look, I could go on all day about why this game is good, why this game still holds up, and blah blah blah. In the end, you probably heard it all before. People like me enjoy this type of stuff. That's why I also love these games. If you're the type of Nintendo fan who only plays Smash Bros or Fortnite on their Switch, then chances are I sound like an old fanboy to you guys, huh? But that doesn't mean I'm wrong. It's still a good game, and you should really give it a chance, if you have a 360 or Xbox One. Yeah, sadly Rareware belongs to Microsoft now, so we won't be seeing Banjo-Kazooie on the Switch anytime soon. At least that's what I would have said a few months ago. That's right, Banjo-Kazooie are back on a Nintendo console where they belong. I haven't felt this hype since insert endgame spoiler here. A couple of months ago, Microsoft announced that they were partnering up with Nintendo, bringing Xbox Live to the Nintendo Switch along with some of their games. And considering Microsoft owns Rareware and Banjo's coming to Smash, I think it's a safe bet to assume that Rareware might be bringing some of its titles to the Switch. I would sure love for them to bring Rare Replay to the Switch. That way we could get all the classics, but only time will tell. So I guess now you guys have an objective reason to check out Banjo-Kazooie. Go back and see why Banjo-Kazooie earned their place in Smash Bros. Banjo-Kazooie is available on Rare Replay for the Xbox One, a compilation of games all varying from, that's a $60 classic, what a good deal, to, that's 5 minutes of my life I'm never getting back. It costs about 15 bucks these days. You can play Banjo-Kazooie on there, or if you want, just buy it digitally on the Xbox 360 or Xbox One Arcade for 15 bucks. Yeah, just buy Rare Replay, or find an original copy on the N64. So that was Banjo-Kazooie, one of my favorite games of all time, definitely in my top 10. You know, it's funny how 20 years later, I still feel comfortable calling it that. One of my top 10 games of all time. You know what's even funnier? There's another game on the 64 that also came out in 1998 that I would also call one of my top 10 games. What was it called again? Hey Link, do you know what that game was called? Why don't you show us? By the time our heroes get out of the house, there's also miscellaneous things to collect too. There are also miscellaneous things to collect that'll help you out in during situations.
Okay.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And this is a school project or something?
Ray, nice to meet you.
What's this for?
It's just a YouTube video. Yeah, it's a channel of ours where we just make fun videos and like we talk about video games or like current news, cartoons,
Yeah,
like
I gotta be stoned.
yeah, possibly exactly. So
anthropomorphic. One more game that came out in 1998 that I really like. Oops.
just go, hurry up. Hurry up. Don't go in backwards, just go in the right way. Who is this fucking giant? What do you have to say for yourself?